Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. This is Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Mentor Select serves parents who are raising teens. Every week, Derrich interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. All while parenting them to be successful adults, focusing on social and emotional development, something that's left out of the classroom, but not in ours. Be sure to subscribe, share, and rate. This is Mentor Select, and this is your host, Derrich Phillips.
All right, parents, you're in for a real treat today. We have Terrance Williams joining us. How are you, Terrance?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So, Terrance, jump right in. What do you do for a profession?
I'm a civil engineer by degree. My primary focus is structural engineer. I design structures, anything from bridges, buildings, substructures like sewage lines and things like that. I'm not so big into doing the sewage line stuff, but I do foundations and buildings and bridges. That's pretty much my primary focus.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a pretty important job.
Yeah, pretty important. You don't want buildings falling or bridges falling.
Right. Yeah.
I like to say it I don't say no job has been more important than the other, but I look at it like, well, we look at doctors being important, but when a doctor's performing surgery, they mess up when one person dies in a bad, that's a bad situation. However, if we mess up, then usually it's more than just one. It's a lot of people. If a building falls, it's going to be more than one person in it. More than likely, if a bridge falls, it's going to be more than one person on the bridge. So, we have the chances of lives being in our hands is a lot high. So you have to kind of look at that way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that it's really a fascinating career field. And I don't really meet a lot of civil engineers, especially African-American civil engineers. So I'm really excited to hear just more about the profession. And also, my audience is parents who are raising teenagers, just trying to get some of your experience of working with teens and getting them excited about STEM careers. So I guess a little more background into becoming a civil engineer. What does that entail? What's the requirements?
Well, it's a lot of school, a lot of studying,
a lot of math too.
Yeah, a lot of math. Math is primarily math. You have some theoretical studies that you have to do, but math is everything pretty much derives back to math. So you pretty much start from year one, semester one, and some kind of math. So and you take that all the way up to, well, for me it was calculus 4. So
holy cow!
So it gets up there, but so. Then you have a part of math called differential equations, where you're pretty much deriving your own equations. So in like mid-level calculus, you're kind of given equations, and then you kind of have to manipulate those equations to make those work. But as you get higher up, then you actually have to come up with your own equation and make sure that that equation actually works. And don't defy any mathematical laws or anything like that.
Okay. Awesome. Now, I guess a little more about your background. Were you always a good student, always good in math growing up?
No, and that's the funny thing with me. Growing up, I was especially if I don't want to be too long-winded on this, but I know back in elementary school, I was in a lot of trouble, and
that's what I can relate to.
Teachers they pretty much wrote me off, And funny story, my mother, she ran into a teacher, one of my elementary school teachers, and she just told her about, this wasn't recently, but she had told her about when I became an engineer. And she said the lady almost fainted, there's no way Terrance became an engineer.
No way.
But as it went on, I really kind of got into mathematical things a lot later, even after high school. A lot of people I don't really say this much, but like my senior year, I was only in high school algebra, and that I barely passed. I wanted to be an architect originally, and then because I was good at drawing and I had a good imagination and everything, and and I had a knowledge for buildings, but just didn't really want to get too much into the math because it wasn't working for me at that
Right.
point. But then I went off to the Navy, and something happened when I was there. I just was able to kind of convert my drive for other things in life to kind of start wanting more. Set out on this mission to be an engineer, not really knowing at the time how much math it really was. I just knew it was a lot of math. So my first semester in school, I actually failed my first, it was college algebra, and I actually failed that class. Then that's when it kind of hit me like, okay, well, one, I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared, for this level of knowledge. And it wasn't that the algebra part of it, because I could have done better, but it was just the speed of it and how other people in the classes was coming in from high school. And here I am coming in from, some years of the military. And I'm like, well, these kids kind of just knew these things versus stuff I had to go and study. So I spent time just kind of playing catch up. But I want to say then I came back and took the class, and I passed it with an A. And then from there, I pretty much just hit the ground running, and I pretty much went from college algebra, which is actually a prerequisite to college classes.
Okay.
I went from there and took that all the way through calculus 4 and differential equations, and so I guess I can say I kind of started behind, but because of my drive and motivation, I was able to kind of quickly catch up and get ahead, and eventually, I went from doing bad, well, as I'll say, bad in classes, making D's and C's, where I'll have to retake it because they don't fly in the engineering program. Once I had to do it, and I set a standard for myself that wouldn't happen again, and I just buckled down, studied, and learned everything that I can, and I like to joke around and say I became smart eventually, but
that's a really inspiring story. And what I love most about your story is when you think about engineers, like, oh yeah, they're just natural math whizzes and it just comes so easy to them. But as you mentioned, it was your drive and motivation. You had to work at it. But that's hope for any of us, for people like me who's not good at math. And I'm sure maybe parents have some students or some of their teens are probably not good at math but interested in engineering. And your story goes to show, like, hey, you don't have to be a math whiz starting out. You just work towards that and develop those skills. So I like that a lot. And then also, I mean, you're from the same place, Gary, Indiana. So It's a tough place to grow up. Tell us, how was it growing up in Gary for you?
Yeah, and like you said, it's a tough place to grow up. You see a lot of things that you wouldn't think you would see as a kid. You see the different killings, the drug deals, the different things that happens, and it's easy to kind of get tied up into those things. But for me, I guess I would say sports was kind of my saving grace, because I never really let myself get into the drugs. I never got into the whole gangster life because I always had a goal to want to be something in life. Back then, it was the typical person growing up in the inner city trying to be an athletic phenom, basically.
Yeah.
But it was those sports that kind of kept my head on track and knowing that, well, if I got in trouble, then I couldn't, I wouldn't be able to play or wouldn't be able to run track or, play in a football or basketball game or something like that. So, yeah, that was kind of what kept me focused. But it is definitely a tough life, not to say that I didn't ever get in any trouble or I didn't ever get in any fights or anything like that. It kind of go hand in hand, when you grow up in that type of environment, it's a good chance that it might happen, but it's not something that I'm saying that, has to happen, especially knowing what I know now. And I mean, being an adult looking back at it now, some of the things I did get into, I could have easily avoided had I had a little bit different guidance on different things. Like I said, primarily that sports thing that kind of just kept my mind, centered around making it and also I had good parents too. And that's, I give all praise to them because they stuck with me. They could have wrote me off also like the teachers did when I was in elementary school, but, they were determined to make sure I wasn't going to be another statistic and wasn't going to be being arrested or put in jail. I don't think that they even knew that I would be an engineer one day, but they but they definitely knew
Believed in you.
Yeah, they believed in me. They knew I was going to do something. So
yeah, that's great. And when I think of just knowing your family, you come from a big family, and knowing that, hey, unfortunately, growing up in the hood, not a lot of kids' parents are married or living in the same household. So that's something that sticks out to me about your family, where big, close-knit family, mom and dad are together. Sure, that played a big role as well.
Yeah.
Indeed. Now, like you mentioned, it's like, teachers wrote you off. They figure like, hey, it's no hope for Terrance. But that just goes to show it's never too late. Someone always can reinvent themselves. And if they have the drive, the motivation, if they're able to just see more, then it's always hope. So your story exemplifies that. Now, I guess kind of want to pivot, get more into the guidance for parents who maybe they want to try maybe expose their teens to STEM careers and kind of really help them see those are really good careers. What are some things that parents can do, and what's some experiences you've had with mentoring of teens towards STEM careers, at least exposing them to?
Yeah, I know through the different mentorship programs that I've volunteered for. I know when I lived in Virginia, volunteered. My wife and I volunteered for the program called For Kids, and also a program here in Chicago. My wife primarily volunteered for. The mentor program basically is designed for inner city kids so that they can get into the STEM program, so that they can be inspired by it. And one of the things that we noticed a lot, because it's not just for, I'll say, Black kids or Black teens, or it's also, for, and it's not just for impoverished kids neither. It's, it has people who from wealthy backgrounds as well as poverty backgrounds. But we see a lot through the different races, though, that in the different backgrounds, a lot of people from the inner cities and the people who have less means, they tend to want to shy towards the things that's also what we like to call the typical stereotype,
Okay.
because, I know growing up for myself, and my wife also grew up in the inner city, and she's also an engineer as well. She's an electrical engineer.
Okay, I was about to ask you that. Wow.
Yeah, but we both we see that each time we ask a kid, usually what they want to do, they say, "Oh, I want to be a rapper, or I want to be a dancer, or I want to be a basketball player, or football player." Something. The things that they seen making money, or
Right.
So they always kind of shy towards those things. And what we kind of noticed is that it's like known statistic, everyone don't make it. It's like it's probably that.
Yeah, that's a hard road, the 1%er. So maybe that's
that 1% that makes it out. And we try to inspire people to let them know that, hey, it's other ways, and I'm not saying that engineering is the only way, but you can live a pretty decent life, have nice things, and achieve things, and by doing things other than the having to be that 1%, be that top 1% of everyone else in the world that's trying it. But
right.
so I guess to get back to your question, I guess some of the things that parents can do. One, I like to say, expose them. I don't want to say early, but the earlier the better. And the reason I say the better, I'm not saying that it's impossible if you don't expose them early, but the earlier the better is because then you don't have to, they're not going to fight from behind so much. They can kind of get into the after school programs. They can get into some of the volunteering programs. And
Right.
I won't mention names because it depending on the area that they're in, it's a different one. But there are hundreds of programs that's out there, and they show how to actually implement these things. NSBE is like a Black engineering fraternity in college, but we used to go into the inner city schools, and we would show how to build bridges, but we would build bridges out of like toothpicks and things like that, or popsicle sticks, and kind of see the structural integrity of the bridge that they would build. And
Okay.
you would think a popsicle is, pretty thin. So it's, but when you build it correctly, it can actually hold a lot of weight. That we would just do things like that. But so the earlier, the better. You kind of expose them to it, let them see how fun and interesting it can be. And as the work get harder, then they can actually hold on to the things that they remember being fun, because you're going to get back to the fun part of it. But it's the learning curve that you got to, deal with at first, because as engineers, we do think a little different, that's why
I've heard that. Yeah, my wife, she works for an engineering firm, and yeah, she said engineers definitely think differently. But another thing I like that you mentioned, I want to highlight in terms of, like I said, exposing kids as early as possible to STEM careers, because that prevents them from having to play catch up. And as something you mentioned, when you leaving the Navy and going to college, like it was like felt you had to play catch up, and that's you're able to do it successfully. But I'm sure you've seen a lot of students where they were not able to successfully catch up and then keep up with their peers. And I think that's one of the big things is exposing them early as possible, and then like you said, making it fun also. That's a good thing, because if you just say, all right, let's go do some calculus 4, that's not going to be appealing as let's build some bridges out of toothpicks or a popsicle. So yeah, that's really, really good points.
Because like you said, you mentioned earlier about you don't really see a lot of Black engineers, and that's definitely true. I say year one, it was like a lot of us. First semester, everyone wants to be an engineer. It seems to be when you go to engineering school. Yeah. But then each semester, some are dropping off, and that's really that factor of just not being exposed, and then also some people just don't have the drive or even the support backing them, and a bunch of different factors that go into it. But it's different. It's a lot of different ways and avenues that you can explore, especially as parents. To kind of prepare your child for that, because it's going to be a tough road, and and it's going to be times where they're going to feel like failures, because I've been there, but having those mentors that I had in college, and people and the friends that I've made, that really carried me through there, so as a parent, being there to support in a sense and try to sympathize and understand, that this is hard and they're going through it, but kind of see it help them lighten the load as much as they can also once they get to the college level, So.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, it's going to be a tough road. There's no doubt about it. And then especially being if you're a minority, and I guess you can feel even more alone going that journey if you don't have those support systems, those mentors. In addition to mentors, what are some other, some sources of support that students can reach out to help them just get through the tough journey?
Honestly, for me, my teachers. Honestly, I used to spend a lot of time with my teachers. I knew them; they knew me. I guess they understood the journey because they've been there, and they went farther because they have PhDs. But they opened a lot of doors, I would say, in the sense of just a newfound wisdom for me. And honestly, I credit a lot of my success in school, making my dean's list, and all of that, the times I did, to one teacher I had in math, and that was when I pre-calculus, and she actually told me she wasn't going to let me fail. And it wasn't like I'm going to pass you. Right. She was like, she wasn't going to let me fail. And I'm actually spent hours, in her office, and she would just drill math problems in my head, just, okay, what about this? What happens if you move X here? What happens if you move Y there? What about this kind of curve? All stuff like that. And I'm just like, why are you doing this? But it was that teacher, like, that really just, she taught me math. And I mean, that wasn't the highest level I went to, but it was like, that was like my ground, my foundation that actually got me going. So I say, when you get to those levels, really lean on your teachers. Like, and they are really willing to help. A lot of times, I'll say most of them, you might run into that one that's not really, but it's most of your professors are really willing to help, and that they really want to see you be successful. So And I see the ones that didn't make it or wasn't so successful with it, they really wasn't trusting of their teachers too much. They kind of would try to lean on their friends and things like that. But my group of friends and I, we would always be in our professor's office, not sucking up, but we were trying to pull as much knowledge as we can. It's kind of like in life, if you want to be successful at something, find you a mentor that's already done it, So that's what we did.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think it's often overlooked or just downplayed, the importance of building those relationships with your professors, taking advantage of their office hours and looking to them to be mentors as well. So yeah, that's really, really good advice. Now, going back to the professor you mentioned specifically, you said you was wondering why was she going that extra mile to ensure that you didn't fail? I guess, did you ever find out the answer, or what do you think is the reason why?
Well, she was married to a Navy officer, and I was in the Navy.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly if this was it, but I mean, she really mentioned it a lot. I'm not trying to make it a race thing, but she was a white professor, but she was married to a black officer, and
Okay.
he was actually an engineer too. And then she kind of, I don't know, she kind of always kind of related to me in that aspect of just, her husband's in the Navy, and so was I at the time, and because I was transitioning out of the Navy, and so she really kind of just related to me in that aspect.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. And I think it highlights an important point, especially now we know a lot going on with social injustice and racism and things like that. But I found in my personal experience, being having cybersecurity background, serving in the Army, just a lot of times I was like one of the few minorities and few African-American males. And oftentimes when I demonstrated that effort, I felt like I did get special treatment in some ways in terms of people going the extra mile. Like, okay, I'm not going to let him fail. I see he's putting forth that effort. I'm going to go above and beyond to try to help him succeed. So I think those are stories that are highlighted as often in terms of where maybe Caucasians or people of the different races, where I know I want to help this person, whether it's because of the color of their skin or whatever. But yeah, a lot of times I think as African-American men, especially, we may see as our color is holding us back or just so much against us. But I've had a lot of experiences where I felt my color actually helped me in terms of people realizing, I see he wants something out of life and he's working hard. Hey, how can I help him? So I think that's an important thing just to really point out. Everybody's not against you, especially that's something my uncles always tell me, hey, or uncle or my grandma, one of them, they say, hey, people want to help you if they see you helping yourself. So I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And just like that teacher, it was so many people that, inspired me. My grandfather, he was a man who taught me to always work and learn what you need to learn. But once you learn what they know, you go be the boss. My father, he inspired me in so many ways. But, in my last semester, I was getting the swing of things and, making dean's lists and everything like that. But then it was hard because my grandfather passed away and then of cancer. And then my father, right after that, he was diagnosed with cancer. And, it took a lot out of me because everything in me was like, go home, be with your family. Even though when I would talk to him, my grandfather said before he passed away, he was like, no, you stay there, get your degree, and my father, he was telling me, no, stay, get your degree. But, to my friends, I was letting them know, like, I think I'm gonna have to go. I think I'm gonna have to just pick it up later. But then I met someone in my last year, this young lady, she had her master's degree in electrical engineering, and she just kind of, started assuring me that, hey, you can do so much more when you finish, teaching me how, to actually, that beyond school, just, hey, how to go out and get a job, how to present myself better, and it was things that I've learned along the way too. But I mean, she just kind of really like poured that stuff into me and really cared, and the ironic thing is that, once it was all done, this woman became my girlfriend, and years later she became my fiance, and then years later she became my wife. But so I really credit a lot of success in my life was due to my wife, and had it not been for her, I don't know, I probably wouldn't have the success that I have today. So I constantly thank her, and I give her praise because, everything that I do, even from here out, it would be because of the strength and the things that I see in her, and the way that she encouraged me in ways that she probably don't even realize.
Wow, that is an incredible love story. I love it. Certainly, as men, having a good woman by our side can bring the best out of us.
Now, in terms of going back to, you say you did join the Navy right out of high school?
Actually, went to college a year.
Okay.
That actually, it wasn't that it wasn't working out. My classes was going pretty well, and I guess not to keep hitting on this, but I had a teacher there my second semester because I couldn't afford. I was having a hard time paying for school, coming from a poverty background, so I didn't have any help from other than hey, the food and all that. But my parents couldn't afford. I had five siblings, so it wasn't like. And my brothers and I, we were all a year apart, so it was like it wasn't like we were going to be able to really lean on our parents too much for support financially.
Right.
So I had a teacher that was there. I didn't have money to pay for my books, and so I kept going to class. Though I'll never forget the class. It was World Civilization, which had nothing to do with anything I did in life. But anyway, that teacher he said to me, he was like, Terrance, you keep coming to class even though you don't have a book. He's like, and in my class, you need a book in order to pass. He was like, why don't you bring a book? So I told him, I said, well, sir, I can't afford to pay for my books. I'm waiting on a financial aid check, and it hadn't came through. And he was like, well, come by my office. I'm going to see what I can do to help. So I go by his office the next day, and he's like, all right, let's go to the bookstore. And I'm thinking like, oh, he must got some kind of connect over here with his book. He's going to kind of help or something like that. And this guy, he takes me over there, and he's like, all right, what classes do you have? So I gave him my schedule. He bought every book that I needed for that semester.
Wow.
And he was like, yeah, and the way that you repay me is like, you make sure that I can see you run track this semester or whatever.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, well, thank you. But but it wasn't even about the sports. I mean, I know people might take it like, oh, it was athletic help and all that, but no, it wasn't. It was really just he really wanted to help. But long story short, things just got really too expensive for me. I couldn't really afford it, and I found myself back in Gary. And I'm like, well, I was talking to a friend of mine who ended up joining the Air Force, but we were both sitting on the porch, and we're like, we got to do something. We can't just sit here and be another statistic. We got to.
Right.
So we picked up, and I joined the Navy. We both went to the Navy together, the Navy recruiter.
Okay.
And then I had about a month before I shipped off, and then he backed out and went to the Air Force. But,
still served. Different branches. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool. Obviously a good decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just another example of that with that professor. He saw you trying to help yourself, not having a book, but still you're showing up versus you using that as an excuse. Hey, I can't afford a book. I don't have a book, so I'm not going to show up to class. And of course, he's not going to go out of his way to help you. But yeah, again, you're showing that effort, took that initiative. So that's something that I always emphasize. Anyone who's trying to accomplish anything worthwhile, show that initiative. Just part of it is just showing up. In reality, show up. People want to help you, but you got to help yourself first.
And I sat on the front row.
Like you wasn't hiding nothing. Like I'm gonna get as much as I can, for as long as I can. Yeah, that's great. Now you mentioned earlier, Shu, as far as what you joined in the Navy, how they kind of, I don't know if that reignited your drive and motivation. What was it about the Navy that hey, I want to be an engineer, or it gave you that confidence?
It was a few things, but in the Navy, I got to travel and see the world, and I saw a whole lot, But I was in these going to some of these third world countries, and some of them are harvest part is really bad, and then the nice part is really good.
Right.
But when I was there, I was in Malaysia, and I was seeing them build a one of the towers there. I don't remember the name, but I was watching them build, and then something about watching them build that building, it just dawned on me, like, you know what? I want to be able to build a city one day. And then I'm like, well, I started like just fishing my brain, like, how can I do this? What knowledge do I need? And then I was speaking to a friend of mine from back in Gary, but I was still overseas, but I was speaking to him. He was working at a hotel at the time. And he was saying that he just ran into this guy who was a civil engineer, structural engineer. And he was like telling him all about the different things. And he's like, oh, yeah, you should look into that. So I started looking into it. And I had went back to my whole feeling of wanting to be an architect. And then it's like, the more I looked into the structural engineer part, I started seeing what they actually do and what they actually have to know and things like that. And then that's when it kind of just hit me like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And it was nothing in my sight that said I could. It was like
Right.
It was everything that I looked at myself. I'm like, it was a bunch of ways I can figure out why not to do it. But I really just kind of went against all of that and was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. Like I don't care. I'm just gonna try. And I went ahead and did it. And it was a road, like I said before, but I got there. And I won't forget another, I guess, not to keep prolonging too much, but right before I got ready to get out of the military, when I made my mind up to leave, I was getting my papers and everything together so I can process out. And I ran into this chief for us, but it's an E7. And he told me, he was like, he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm getting ready to get out. He said, if you get out, you can't come back in. And I told him, I said, well, why would I want to come back in? He was like, because he said a lot of people get out and they can't make it in the real world. So they want to come back in. He was like, and you probably going to be just like that. You're going to try to come back in, but they're not going to let you come back in. Kind of played along with him a little bit, but I'm like, why couldn't I come back in? I was like, I never got in any trouble. I made it rank pretty fast.
Right, trying to scare you.
Yeah. And then and he's like, you're going to just want to have to come back in, and you can't. And I was like, well, I'm going to be an engineer, so I don't need. And he just kind of shut up talking.
Should have saw the look on his face. It was priceless.
Exactly.
Wow, that's cool. It's always going to be those doubters and the haters, and a lot of times it's just people that they don't have confidence in themselves, or they don't see themselves in that scenario making it in the quote unquote real world outside of the military. So of course they're trying to discourage others from doing it as well, because their own fears. I can show you better than I can tell you.
Exactly.
That's what you did. That's cool. But yeah, going back to what you're seeing, that building in Malaysia being built, I'm sure it's hard, one of them tall high rises.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that one thing can just set a series of events off and just really open up your eyes and decide, hey, I'm going to do it. And I love what you mentioned about there was nothing saying that, hey, Terrance, you can't do this. You got this. No, everything was like, nah, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But
exactly.
At the end of the day, you made your mind up and decide, hey, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. And then, hey, the rest is history. Yeah, it's something that certainly I hope parents take away and share with their teens that, yes, first, it's never too late. It's always going to be people that's going to doubt you, write you off. But yes, parents have to be that support system and encourage their teens, expose them to as much as possible, because you just never know what it'll lead to.
And that's why I get with the whole exposing early. It's not necessarily, hey, teaching them math problems early and have them doing calculus when they're 4. I'm not really necessarily saying doing all of that. I mean, hey, if you can do it, wow, that'd be great. But the thing is, it's more so like just exposing them. Like when you go out and you're driving up the street, hey, look at this building. Even if you don't got to be an expert on it, but you can Google and YouTube something really quick and hey, look at this, do you know what it took to do this? And, or, this size and, probably, you can do this. And, and just showing them, kind of, because I remember growing up too, living across from Chicago, we would go to Miller Beach, and I'm sure you remember when Coach Jones would have us running track.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was a form of exposure, getting out the city.
Exactly. But we get to see those buildings, and, now look across and I'm like, wow, that's cool, but still, it's just like, getting exposed to those things. And it was like, so a lot of those things, I like to joke. Well, back in the day, I used to joke around, but it was like a truthful joke, but I was always in the wrong place at the right time because because it was things like that I didn't care to know, but I end up being there that I had to learn it. And it was like, and all of those things end up, basically building me to be, to be able to become who I am. And I end up using all those things at some point in my life, so exposing them, to those things, even if you're not saying, hey, go be an engineer, or hey, go be a doctor, or hey, go be this, just exposing them to the things so that they can make their own decision towards that. But you already, almost in the sense of the, like a old sensei type of thing, you know what you're doing, but they don't.
Yeah, that's really great advice, and it comes down to that exposure, and just unlocks your kids' imagination, and then they just never know where it's going to lead them. So that's great. Exposure and just having that support, sky's the limit. Absolutely. Well, Terrance, you're giving us a lot of great, I love you have some awesome stories, and just your story is so inspirational. So I'm really happy that you came on and shared it with us and gave the parents some practical tips, strategies, and resources that they can use to just really expose their teens and help guide them in wherever their heart takes them. So that's really cool. So Terrance, if any parents want to get in contact with you, maybe their teens are interested in engineering, what would be a good contact for you?
Yeah, feel free to contact me. My email will be TERRJWILL, and that's at gmail.com. Contact me with any questions you have. I'm happy to help. I'm always looking to inspire any youth, or if a parent, even if they won't feel like they want to go back to school and try it, it's,
exactly. Yeah.
It's, any way I can help, just reach out.
That's fantastic. And just want to say it's been awesome. We had opportunity growing up with you. And what year did you graduate? I think you're 3 years behind me, right?
Yeah, I graduated in 2004. So.
Okay, so 2 years behind. But I graduated with your brother, Patrick, in 2002. But like I said, I'm just really proud of you. I always view just having a good head on your shoulders. You come from like I said, a big, tight, close-knit family. And I'm proud of everything you're doing. And we need more just mentors like yourself, especially minorities and civil engineering. That's awesome. So I hope you inspire others to follow in your footsteps. Appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
All right, will do. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Hosted by Terrance Phillips. Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. We get it. That's why Terrance interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. That's why we do the show. Be sure to share Mentor Select with other parents of teens. Follow us on social media at Mentor Select to stay up to date on the latest tips, strategies, and resources for parenting teens. Send your questions and comments to darrich@mentorselect.com. Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes. Till next time, this is Mentor Select.